this your serious face?
Wait, sorry, let me make sure.
Joanna's going to lead the charge here. She's going to
Okay.
explain it and moderate. I'm the color commentary of
hope you have
sports
some
booth
questions.
here.
So Joanna's the adult.
Go on.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming to Willamette Week's endorsement interview on Mount Hood Community College bond. These ground rules typically apply when you have teams of people, but we only have you guys. But we're just going to try to gain an understanding over the next 40 minutes or so about your measure and what it aims to do, and some other questions that we have. And then if we cut you off, we're not offended. We're just trying to get through our questions. So yeah, don't take that as an indication of our endorsement. And yeah, we can get started with introductions. If you could both introduce yourselves, and then one of you state the measured title, what it does, and how much it raises, and by what mechanism. That would be great.
Hi, I'm Andrew Spear, and I'm on the Board of Education at the college. I'm currently the vice chair this year, and then I'm also co-chairing the PAC for the campaign side also.
Good morning, Lisa Scari, president of Mount Hood Community College.
Great. And then if one of you could run through the measure number.
Yeah, and it's measure number 26258. Sorry, measure 26258 on the ballot, and is a $136 million bond request.
Mm-hmm. And what is its purpose? What is it trying to do?
Yeah, so there's so as part of the bond, we're not requesting any funds to build out new square footage. So there's no expansion of facilities. It's all to update and modernize and retrofit current square footage and facilities. And we have 4 categories. Safety being top of the list, and so that's falling in the categories of like seismic, and then also just physical security on campus. Currently we don't have a way to lock down the campus as a centralized system, so it's like a physical key lock system that we have to go through now. And then also career technical is the other area of investment. So taking our allied health as an example is to be able to have a interdisciplinary lab space where you have nursing and CNAs and respiratory care and the other allied health disciplines all doing their labs in a co-mingled facility to mimic real life. And then we're just getting to the place of needing to do retrofit of normal facilities like roofs and HVAC systems. So that's just kind of a basic maintenance category. And then there's modernization of the classroom facilities, and so that's being able to have hybrid facilities that include in class and then online platforms.
And out of the $136 million, do you have generally an understanding of how much money is going to go to which of those categories?
Yeah, we have some planning, and it's outlined a little bit in the ballot measure itself, but we've not nailed down like exact numbers. But Lisa can probably speak to the plans.
Yeah, so the kind of the largest area, about $25 million, is going to be going to the classroom and lab improvements. We're looking at about another $16 million for the safety upgrades, and then another $16 million for kind of building envelope projects. And so those are like the big ones, and then there's lots of smaller things like wayfinding, right? So students, because if you've ever been to our campus, it's one big gray building, and so where students are trying to find their classes, it's hard. So just even some simple things like painting the wings different.
Oh, is that right?
colors.
Okay.
And steps, right? Repairing steps because there's chunks out of them. So
Yeah. And can you talk me through briefly the mechanism that you're using to raise this money? Is this a tax increase, or is this kind of can you just explain, what it's being funded by?
Yeah, this is a bond measure, so we have, other than going through state funding or private donations, we have no way to access capital dollars other than just building it into our general fund budget. So in order to make a sizable investment, we have to go out for bonds requests similar to like our K through 12 partners, or we don't fall into the university bucket where we can access bonds in the same way.
So
They can issue their own bonds, for example.
So then you guys how does this work then?
So we go out for voter approval, and we have the ask, and so the ask is currently in the voters pamphlet right on our ballots.
Could you
And-
state that just for in case people are watching and they're curious?
Yeah, so measure 26258 is requesting the $136 million bond request, and then in that ask is the categories of investments.
Oh, sure. I mean,
we
like
just
per
outlined.
like the property value.
Oh,
that you could
and then
yeah.
the expected impact to property owners is on average within our district that we cover $5 per month for the average assessed value, $5 per month or $60 a year for the average assessed value within the homes, properties in our district.
So that's per property, not per $1,000 of value or anything like
Yeah.
that.
It's 25 cents per
$1,000.
assessed.
Okay, and
Yeah.
what's your area?
So we range from about 82nd out to Government Camp, and then we go.
Okay.
We go a little bit south into Happy Valley, and then we go out to Corbett and past Corbett into Cascade Locks,
Interesting.
and then just the river being our.
And what defines this district? I'm sorry to be ignorant, but why is it this
School districts.
school? That's your school district. Okay, and that's where okay, got
Yeah.
it. Great.
So
It's a big
David
district.
Douglas, Park Grove, Centennial, Gresham Barlow, I said Centennial.
Reynolds.
Reynolds, Corbett, and Oregon Trail.
All the way up to Government Camp.
So we cover so we go into Portland, right?
Yeah.
Because of that being the unincorporated areas of Multnomah County, previously when the district was formed.
Sure. Can you say what is the enrollment now, and what are your sort of specialties at the school, or if that's an appropriate question?
So last year we served 19,000 students. Our average age is about 27, and most of our students are part-time. So I always like to put that in there because people usually think people that go to college go full-time. A lot of part-time students. Our areas, we've seen tremendous growth within the CTE area, and areas of focus have been in healthcare. So we do everything from CNA to registered nursing to respiratory care to surgical tech to dental hygiene to physical therapy assistant and medical medical assisting. I think I've captured them all. But so a very strong allied health core, which is why that's one of the focus areas of the current technical ed expansion. They also have strength within the engineering, kind of mechatronics space, advanced manufacturing. We've been working really closely with onsemi and microchip in the semiconductor area and figuring out how to both upskill their current workforce, but then bring in their new workforce. And then there's a lot of manufacturers kind of in the area, so those skills translate. And then we have kind of some specialty one-offs. So we've got a funeral science program that is the only one in the area. So, and at one point we were the only one in the Northwest.
Whoa.
So that, we have a fisheries program.
Funeral science is like embalming and cremation.
It prepares morticians.
Well, you're the only.
Wow.
What is the enrollment in there per year? I'm just curious.
They are, I'm going to give you an estimate because a lot of those programs that have a lot of federal or national standards are limited, and you have to have a certain student-faculty ratio. So I want to say they're around 16 to 18 first-year students, and then 16 to 18 second-year students.
So if I went there and wanted to become a CNA, say I could do all my training at Mount Hood. I wouldn't have to go elsewhere for it, or okay. What about as a PA?
So a physical therapy assistant, you could do it all there. Now, if you wanted to go on and transfer and get a bachelor's or advanced degree in physical therapy, you would need to transfer to OHSU or...
Yeah, but you're making steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I'd also like to bank off the enrollment question a little bit. I know that, community colleges have historically suffered since the pandemic. I know that you guys are growing, but I'm curious, if you guys are going on target to hit rates similar to pre-pandemic years, and if these numbers are going to, if these facilities are going to go toward, students actually using them.
Yes. So that is the good news. The pandemic was really rough on us, especially again because we have strength in the career and technical ed area, and so while some of those continued, people were kind of like, whoa, what's going to happen with the world? So as things have returned to normal, we've seen our enrollments bounce back. We've been increasing 2 to 4% a year, and we are on target that next year we will be back above pre-pandemic levels. So pleased with that. The other thing that we're also adjusting to, though, is we're seeing students pre-pandemic are not what students want post-pandemic. So there's far more interest in shorter term stackable credentials. And so can I come in and get some skills that I can then take out to the workforce and then come back and build on it? And so and even non-credit, we're seeing growth in our non-credit credential areas where, you're teaching real technical skills and people needing that for jobs, but not necessarily wanting to go through the full degree. And so we're trying to figure out how.
Stackable.
Yeah.
I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
There's some examples. Yeah.
Well, one that the board just approved and the state just approved is in, we mentioned physical therapy assistant program. It's a very competitive program to get into, so there's limited slots. There's also a lot of interest, and we serve a very diverse, multilingual community, which is a real asset. And so they've developed a physical therapy aide position, which is basically the first year that will give the students a degree of clinicals, so they'll actually have work experience, that at the end of that they can go out and work as a physical therapy aide. But they also get then priority points to get into our physical therapy assistance program. So
I see. So it is gradual,
Yes.
stackable, gradual,
Yep.
weighted. Yeah.
yeah, same with our CNA program. So students who complete our CNA program get additional points to get into our nursing program.
And you have a full-on nursing program.
Yes.
You can go become an RN at Mount Hood.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we graduated.
Isn't there a lot of demand for that stuff right now?
There is.
I mean, isn't that like, I cover OHSU and they're like freaking out
Yep.
because there's not enough nurses.
Yes. Very true.
I'm afraid to get sick.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah, and that's one of the amount of folks that are retiring, so we want to make sure we can get them through. One of the quality standards, I will say, is that nursing programs are capped, and so you have a certain amount that the faculty-student ratios are smaller, which I think is important and a critical thing, but also clinical placements. So the number of placements where students can actually do that hands-on learning out in the hospitals, what some people don't realize is you need to have places to do those clinicals, and if you don't, the students can't get the hands-on experience, which means they can't become nurses. And so there's this kind of ecosystem issue that we need to figure out other ways of addressing.
And you're pulling most of your students from, like, I would assume, these surrounding school districts on this map.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's interesting, especially the declining enrollment across a lot of these K-12 school districts. Is it like the part-time thing that really helps, real students back to Mount Hood, or, what is?
I think it's one of those things, we have lots of theories of
Yeah,
what it
sure.
should be. We also like to think we create an environment where students want to come, and we try to make it real, relatable, and intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You're saying it's unusual. They're growing while.
Yeah, I mean, so many school
Portland.
districts are shrinking.
Yeah. I wonder if this is a higher growth area though than downtown Portland.
Yeah.
The interesting demographics that I think about the area we serve, right? The highest population of people of color live in East Multnomah County in the state.
Right.
And then so you have an interesting socioeconomic background, and then you have an interesting ethnic background, and then we also go into rural areas. And so I feel like the location of our college in that space of East Multnomah County and then out into Clackamas County, in northern Clackamas County, is an interesting location. When I'm an alumni of the college, and when I was going there, there was people from around and past Hood River that were coming in because of the program offerings, and so I think but predominantly we're serving our community, but I feel like that's the big C of community within community colleges' names. Like that's the offer around access. The other part that I think is unique around community colleges right now is the state has been authorizing the ability for community colleges to provide 4-year degrees, and we just started our first cohort under cybersecurity for a bachelor's in cybersecurity degree. And so there's some more degree programs coming, but that's also an entry point for students, right, to meet them where they're at, both their location, right, their financial ability, and then just, right, their status in life, right, being able to be flexible to that. So those are the attributes of community college, I think, that are important for access.
You must serve a lot of immigrants, maybe,
Yes.
right? I mean, yeah, that's a great population because they are driven.
Yeah.
And you know, want to get ahead,
Yeah.
and are serious.
Yeah. No, I've met some of them through student government.
Yeah.
You know, who have been here 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
and you know, they went through high school, and now they're entering, right, their higher ed, and it's really impactful. Like, it really conceptualizes the work of this policy board work that we do on the board level, and then with the college president. But it's the outcomes, right?
Do you measure job placement out of your programs and percentages and things? I mean, you probably do, right?
In some areas, right, it's easier. Unfortunately, there's no like wholesale way that we can track. And 2 years ago, there might have been more interest in that than in this current environment.
Why's that?
I think there's people are concerned about their personal information.
Oh,
How
okay.
it can be weaponized.
Sure.
Right, so I think there's
Yeah,
just a...
yeah.
But so yeah, like within the nursing program, we know NCLEX pass rates, we know placements, so much better in the smaller programs. The general transfer, we also know if they're transferring in state, and I think we also can get out of state, but it's, yeah, being able to quantify that in a way that, you know, we can say, these numbers are placed in this job, in this
tough.
wage, yeah.
Well, what are the ones that you do know that you're kind of proud of?
Nursing,
Yeah.
obviously, I think that's
Is that-
given based on where it is. But our mechatronics program is an interesting piece because that's a kind of advanced manufacturing robotics. That's been interesting because because of our partnerships, we're attracting current employees because they want to upskill and get better
Yeah.
jobs.
Okay, okay.
And so it's a kind of a different way of looking at it. But when you've got older people, right, they're really interested in that career opportunity, career growth, career connection.
Yeah.
So some of those come in and we look not at did you get employed in the field, but did you get increases, right?
I see,
Did you
I
get
see.
a promotion?
And our welding program, like, you know, is another hot one. Our
yeah.
auto tech and auto mechanic program, we serve a Ford, right, certification, and so we hear about, you know, dealerships from on the coast, you know, sending their techs to come be upskilled through our program. So it's just, we're impacting more than just our district
Sure.
with a lot of these programs.
What did you study?
I studied economics.
You did?
Yeah, and then I have my undergrad and master's from PSU in economics also.
Nice. And what are you doing now?
I work for City of Portland.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Economics. I loved economics.
Yeah, no, it's
stuff,
the
isn't it?
dismal science.
No, but I took it in college and it was like, this answers all my questions.
Yeah.
This is it.
I love it because it's the merging of policy and analytics.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I'm gonna.
Yeah, no,
just
go. I'm sorry, I can interrupt all day.
Okay.
No, go.
So this is not the most. You guys have gone out for bond quite recently, no? In 2017, or is that the
Yes.
last time? Okay, and can you kind of, so that one failed, I'm understanding.
Yes.
Can you generally kind of give us a understanding of why that was, and you know what's different about this process? I mean, have you done any polling? Is it looking different? Yeah.
So neither one of us were there in 2016, so I would say our body of what we know is from talking to people and looking at documents.
Sure. How long have you been president?
Since 2018.
Okay.
I was a resident during those last 2 times, but I wasn't engaged with the college in some way.
So, and I just want to put a plug. It's been 50 years since the college has passed a bond. So it's been some time. The big difference this time is we heard going into it that the community didn't necessarily feel like they knew what the college projects were or were involved, and so we started at the beginning with both internal and external community, but intentional engagement. So we did a comprehensive master plan for facilities. which took input from students and employees and all that to come up with kind of the list of possibilities. That was then costed out and finessed, and there was an external bond development work group that was formed of primarily community members. So they looked at this list and said, we think these projects will resonate the best with the local community. That list was then taken out on our roadshow, and we presented and we took feedback and wanted to hear, like, what do you think about this? And both the projects, but then also how we were talking about it. And so that's been going on since a year ago, April. And so that feedback had been fed in. And then taking all that, and the board was very active in that, which was great because they got to hear the comments from the community. That ended up being fed into the final proposal that they adopted in January.
And we also started 5 years ago a strategic planning process. So the board directed that for Lisa to go through, and so that really fed into, hey, what is the needs of community around like program offerings or skill training? And then we were able to take that and have the master facilities plan look and evaluate, okay, with your current infrastructure, what can you offer and where are your needs or your gaps? And so I think that was really integral in setting the stage. This isn't like just hey, we had an idea and we now want to get funding for that idea. We've done a lot of intentional work. And then before the strategic planning process happened, we also went through a lot of work with the board to do increased community engagement by way of making council presentations to the cities out that we serve, community groups. And so there's been a lot of like intentionality of just connecting with community before there is an ask and up-leveling the college and what we're offering, how we're doing, and where we're seeing change.
On the polling question, so we did 2-3 rounds of polls earlier in the process. And, you know, in talking with like the Gresham Safety Committee folks, Columbia Gorge, right? It's a tough place for polling.
Wait, just because of the size?
Demographics.
The demographics and the polls. Most polls don't get over 40%. Or excuse me, don't get over 50%. They're in the mid to high 40s. That said, you look at both Columbia Gorge Community College and the Gresham Safety Levy that was last year, both of those passed. So you take that and listen, but then also don't have it completely predetermined. And some of our polling showed that where we started and after talking with individuals, that number increased. So that was our kind of our decision point in, we can get there, we just need to educate people. So that's been since July, really focusing on that education and refining our message and making it clear.
And our polling really showed that there was a lot of undecided voters too. So we had our yes at the high mid 40s, but then there was this big pool of undecided voters. And I think that's really where on the campaign side we've been focusing efforts on, right around engagement, education, what's the need, right? And so how do we know that those voters tend to be supportive of education and higher ed generally, and so that's been our campaign focus.
What does that look like for you, engaging the community in these voter education efforts?
Yeah, a lot of it's been in the space of just continuing to make presentations. We make a lot of presentations, so 3 to 5 or more a week. And that's by usually a board member and a staff member like Lisa going out. And then we're also really heavy on a mailing program, right? Identifying those undecided voters and then targeting them with mailings. And then digital ad, right? I mean, we're not doing anything different than any other campaign. And so it's just that targeting those specific undecided voters and then hitting them with ads and mailings and then presentations to groups. I know I've made presentations to more conservative areas and had voters say, what is resonating for me is that your ask is reasonable and that you're not increasing your footprint, right? No new square footage.
You're just trying to...
The stewardship part.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, I mean, have you done comparisons of the size of your bond to other similarly sized community college bonds? Like, where would you say it stands? I know it's much lower than the big one that PCC went out for a number of years ago, but if you could just kind of run us through the general context.
And I'm not going to have the exact.
Sure.
I think it's comparable. Chemeketa Community College is currently out for a bond. I think it's within $5 million there. I think it may be a little bit more than the measure that passed for Clackamas, but again, within $5-6 million.
Sure.
So not drastically different. But within dollar amounts, I think it's important to remember too, each of us are doing different things and have different needs.
Right.
But
it's like generally relatively similar, sure. And then can you kind of outline the consequences of what happens if this bond doesn't pass? I mean, what's the plan for the college? What's the damage going to be to the facilities? I mean, what does that look like? Sorry.
I'll talk about
I always
the
have to ask the
facilities.
sad
I'll
ones.
let you talk about budget. So there are things that need to be done, and the money will need to come from somewhere. So the options, I'm getting into budget. There's a lot of finger crossing, right, for something when you've got 50-year-old systems. They
Is that
can
when you were
fail.
founded when, again?
We were founded in '66.
66,
But the
okay.
campus
Just
was
looking at
built
that.
out. The first bond was, I think, $6.5 million, and the second bond in '74 was $6 million. So we built our campus for $12.5 million. That's the extent of the bonding that has happened.
Dang.
Yeah. So we feel like we've been really good stewards with the public investment and stretched it as far as we can. But so to your question, it's that if what fails, and that's what's going to get attention. And at some point, your odds are slim. So we do currently allocate $400,000 a year from our general fund to facility maintenance, and so it will be continue to prioritize what's the greatest need and what's failing the most with that money. And then barring if something catastrophic was to happen, then we need to look at other ways to raise the funds, because or there may be things that just go offline, which would right, then you get this perpetual thing is if we have to close down a wing, that's lack of classrooms, that means you have to cancel classes, which means you have to cancel programs, which means you're serving less students, which means you've got less revenue, and you just get into this vicious cycle of
Do you get any federal money?
yes.
And what's how much and what's the outlook now with this?
So we get 45 million, but I want to add a little caveat on that. That includes Pell Grants. And Pell Grants are awarded to students, and so it comes to us when they come to us. So that's a chunk of it. We also run the East Multnomah County Head Start program. So we provide Head Start to all of our area.
right.
And so that's also a significant amount.
And that's also included in the 45? Or-
Yeah.
Okay.
And Head Start survived the madness so far, right? Yeah.
Kind of.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So far, we
far.
haven't seen any loss of funding, but we have new applications that are being evaluated. So that'll be the question is,
By DOE? Yeah.
Lots
And that's
of
just a crapshoot at this point, right? That changes minute to minute, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Lots
So-
of talk about Head Start cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite
Well, shouldn't you be in the sort of the wheelhouse for bringing manufacturing back to America and having people in technical jobs and, right? I mean, isn't this right? What we're talking about here?
I mean,
if you really believed the rhetoric?
For me, that's where the niches for community college is the career technical direction. I think that's where we're seeing growth, right, in our enrollment. And so
And that's where
I think the answer is yes, but I think that's part of the investment conundrum we're in, right? In order for us to get access to capital, we have to go out for bonds, right? So if we wanted to create a new world of manufacturing training program in our, right, we need facilities to accommodate that, which then creates a bond request. So to voters. So it's a catch-22. With regards to the question though on budgeting and what Lisa was getting at, I've been on the board 6 years now, and so I've been through 5 budget cycles, and what we end up with is, right, we see and approve that $400,000, but then those will all be allocated dollars out to projects across, repaving a parking lot or whatnot, maybe a roof repair or replacement. But then, right, we've had a couple catastrophic failures, like a water main pipe during one of the storm events broke, and it was $150,000+, so it comes to the board for approval, but then it's an additional expense past that $400,000. So then it's coming out of general fund unallocated dollars. That then what the consequence of that is then you bring that to your next budget cycle. You had a deficit, so now you got to make up for that deficit of $150,000. And for every $250,000 of increased revenue need by the college, that's $1 of tuition. So then the board is being asked to say, okay, instead of a $1 tuition increase, we need a $3 this year. So we've been in that cycle where, because of basic maintenance and upkeep not being able to be had because of other past bond efforts failing, right, we place the burden on our students.
How much has tuition gone up, say, in 10 years or?
I'm not going to know that.
Well, I mean, I'll give some reference. So when I went to community college in 1998, it was, for the first time, it was $68 a credit. And then when I came back in 2004 and came back, it was $98 a credit.
Okay.
And then now we're at 128 this year, 128 a credit. And if you had taken that $68 amount from 1998 and inflated it just at 3% inflation rate, we should be at about $100.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounded about like you're in line with, well, these days, inflation. So, okay.
So it's just, I think that to me illustrates the shift of burden onto tuition, right?
Sure.
To keep your facility.
So have you all been in like a consistent budget deficit over the years, or have you mostly just patched with tuition?
So we have, pre-pandemic, when I first came, that was one of the priorities of the board, was to get a more sustainable budget, because we were deficit spending. And, the pandemic came, which changed spending patterns and revenue patterns. And so we were able to, I think, make some intentional investments that set us up coming out of the pandemic stronger. So we are good now, but it's always right. The crazy thing to me is, so the board has, or the budget committee has proposed a budget for next year. And that will go to the Tax Supervision and Conservation Commission in June. But it's pretty much done at our part. We have no idea how much we're getting for state funding. We can predict enrollment, but so we build a budget with a lot of unknowns. And so what you usually then see is, and we try to be very thoughtful and conservative, right? But so the end of the year rolls around, and we do have sometimes savings, which then creates some money that can be used in the following year. But it's the board's really good in that they have a 6-year timeline they look at to figure out, right, if we don't do any changes, where are we going to be, and a goal of a 10% fund balance. So
Great. And then back to the bond really quickly. So the accountability piece of this, I mean, how are voters going to be able to track if this bond does pass, if you guys are committing money to the projects that are intended and et cetera? I mean, what does that look like?
So in our actual bond proposal, there is a budget or a bond oversight committee that will be made up of community members. Since we haven't done it, there's lots of best practice out there that we can look to and figure out how that gets formed. But that's an integral part. That'll be part if this happens. We also do annual audits. And that's an external auditor that comes in. And so that will also be part of the bond to track the money and can make sure that we are doing what we say.
And how frequently do you anticipate that committee meeting or the bond accountability? Do you have any sense? I mean, maybe that's something that happens after the bond is passed.
I don't.
Sure.
But our vice president of administration has looked into that and has kind of found some of the best practices that have been identified for this, and we would follow that.
Great.
And definitely, like, we engaged the community in starting this and all along the way, and so we'd want to engage the community and find out, what do you want, right? How often do you want to hear from us? What do you want that to look like? Because we built trust, and we need to make sure that we maintain that. So.
Where were you before this?
Highline College up in the Seattle area.
Oh, yeah? And you were there for like how long?
25 years.
Oh my, okay. And did they recruit you to come down here? And
It was a point in time that a single mom and my daughter had graduated high school.
Okay.
And so, and it was just right. I was a vice president for 17 years. And I wanted to have bigger impact.
Okay.
And so I chose 3 schools to apply for, and Mount Hood was one of them because the districts are very similar.
because Highline is where up there?
South Seattle, kind of by
Oh,
the
like
airport.
Auburn.
Like Rainier.
Burien, Des Moines, Federal Way.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So south of SeaTac Airport, so very similar
okay.
demographic.
Interesting.
So that was the appeal for Mount Hood.
Okay, so this looks familiar.
Yeah. Only Mount Hood's got far more career and technical ed programs, which was the other attractive piece to me, because I feel, right, when you're trying to build sustainable jobs and families and communities, right, you need to have that component. So.
Got you. Do you do anything at Mount Hood with like in situ out in Hood River, the drone maker? Do those businesses work with you at all?
I don't know, and only because I know we have both our forestry program and our integrated media program are working with drones, and they have advisory committees, but I don't know specifically.
Well, and they're in
I thought it was
Columbia Gorge.
Boeing or something. Boeing at your old college, maybe there was. I don't know how much community colleges, are integrated with local manufacturers. But
Very. Now we do work with the
Yeah,
Boeing plant.
you do?
Yes.
Oh, you do. So you out here in Gresham?
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, they have a presence there still, right? Yeah.
In C2 is also in Columbia Gorges Community College.
Oh, it is?
And so
Okay.
it falls outside our.
Gotcha. Well, you got Boeing. They're bigger.
Yeah.
And you have the semi guys.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I know the federal market is very difficult to predict right now. I mean, do you have any anticipation that inflation or recession or whatever would really impact the cost of these projects and make them overrun?
Possible, right? I think
Sure.
that's
It's a very hard
it's
question to
something
answer.
we're tracking and monitoring, and one of the intentions around the plan was it could be scalable. I mean, our goal is to touch every single classroom because it hasn't been touched for 50 years.
Right.
Realizing that if we need to scale back, we're going to prioritize the ones with the greatest need and take care of those. We're also looking at ways to fill in any gaps, and so there's currently before the legislature a capital match request for $8 million. And that's been approved by the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. That's actually part of their package. And so we're hoping so that would bring in some more money. And then there's always, we have a new vice president for advancement. And so looking to build out that philanthropic activity and because we've got such great industry partners. So how do we make that work for them and us?
Great.
Are you guys working with Vince Jones Dixon at all? I figured, he's a booster out there, right? Did he go there? Because he came out of the.
He's an alum.
Yeah, he came out of his the
Funeral science.
sciences. Yeah, I wondered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really into this funeral science.
Well, no, but Vince talks about that. He was. I think was his family or anything? He that's what he did before he became. Yeah, he's a big booster for East County, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He's an alum too, you said. Is he out there working with?
Yes.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I think this is. I'm good. I think. What about you?
I'm good. Would you guys like to just give a couple minute conclusion as to why people should vote for it? Any last summary statements would be great.
Do you want to rebut the no side?
Yeah.
It's been so vocal.
Yeah.
I would say there were a few factual errors in the statement around declining enrollment. And yes, it's snapshot in time. Our enrollment did decline during the pandemic, but it has continued to it increases the last 3 years. And I'll just give an example. Our applications for next year up 40%.
Wow.
Wait, what?
So, yeah.
4-0?
Wow.
For this point in time. So I don't know if people are applying earlier, maybe that's part of it, but our enrollments year over year are up. Or,
That seems-
applications.
That's, yeah, is this, I mean, so you know, you read about how a lot of people, I know a lot of my friends' kids are not doing the 4-year college thing, because they're like, what am I gonna do with a French literature degree? And like they're becoming, you know, they wanna be electricians, they wanna be plumbers, you know, and that sort of thing. And the trades are like on the rise, right? I mean, you're in the sweet spot for that trend, aren't you?
And a side thing I'll add, we also work with 18 different apprenticeship training
There you
centers
go.
and 6,000 apprentices a year, so.
You do,
um,
yeah.
But yeah, it's, and I do want to add one comment about, like you mentioned, PSU's enrollment. Keep in mind the dip in the 4 years is also attributed to our enrollment. There's kind of that lag indicator because we didn't have as many transfer students.
Right.
So the pipeline took a dip. And so while we're coming up, they've hit this lag. And so as we start to
Build, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to see probably
Sure.
1 to 2 years out. I would anticipate you're going to see their numbers grow as the transfer student pipeline is back to where it used to be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still working the pandemic through the snake in so many ways, right? I mean, I don't think the economy is actually back to anything like, you know, pro forma. But interesting. You deal with a lot of variables.
Yes.
Do you guys have? Do you need an underwriter on a bond like this? Or is this like, I don't even know. I used to cover Wall Street, and I know
Okay.
when you issued a bond, but I don't know about in this case if you need an underwriter. And do you have somebody who's your financial advisor on it?
So yeah, okay, now I'm gonna.
This is kind of extra credit.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Well, one of the
It's
things
just sort of
is-
now you're just educating the journalists.
If it does get approved, we'll work through a state process
Okay,
on selling
yeah.
bonds.
Okay.
So I know that there is some kind of state,
Yeah, you'll do it. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm just curious.
but
No, don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. I was just curious. I'm just trying to.
He's just being
I'm just trying to learn. I'm a lifelong learner.
we've got classes.
On
Funeral signs now.
the campaign, though, what I think is most important is where community colleges sit in our communities and how they give access to students that may not otherwise have access to higher ed and training. What I think is unique about this bond and this campaign is the 50-year point. It's been 50 years since we've had a bond pass, and then also that stewardship piece that we talked about, that the colleges and administrations of the past and current are able to maintain and operate the college successfully. I think what's important about our ask is our intentionality, the work we've done to educate and maintain and be thoughtful of our district and its affordability in terms of the 25 cents per thousand of assessed value, and then thinking of that average impact to residents and homeowners across our district. I think we're in a unique space to be able to provide this investment for the college, and then also be able to provide new training opportunities down the road, because the needs are ever evolving, and we've already hit 5 years since our strategic plan was completed, and so now we need to think the next 5 years, 10 years, and so access to capital is an important part of any local government, and infrastructure is part of that, right? And when we think of capital investments, and so my ask is for folks to be able to step back objectively and be able to think about what are the needs of my community, what are workforce, and how does workforce play into that, and then how can I think about my contribution to that effort, and this is a very tangible way for people to vote yes and see an outcome, within the next 18 to 24 months. So that's what I appreciate about community college is that you see the outcome annually and quarterly, and so it's not something that just lives in a bubble and is some aspirational thing we're just seeking to achieve.
Great. Anything to add to that?
I'll just add one little fun factoid. So the college generates over $420 million a year in the local economy through not only goods and services, but also the earnings of our students. And so this is a return on investment for every public dollar we get, we return $1.60. And so this really is a way to strengthen a community, to build not only the workforce, but also the futures. So.
Great. Thank you both for coming in.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm gonna
Appreciate it.
pause this recording.
Wow.
I don't